So I know a pair of words that are so vile, so abhorred, that if I mutter them, YouTube will demonetize this video in a heartbeat. Want to hear them? Licensed games.
Hello everyone, and welcome to my new series, The Reviewer's Dilemma, where we look at all the gray areas of game reviewing. And let's start with a fun one, shall we? Licensed games. Now, I'm sure that the majority of you know what that is, but for anyone who might not, it basically means games based on franchises created outside of the gaming space. Disney, Marvel, Ninja Turtles, Power Rangers, I think you get the gist. Now, there is a lot we could talk about when it comes to licensed games. They definitely get a bad rap, with a lot of ill will spanning back to a little lost alien and a rainbow that led to a crock of crap. But everyone knows that already. So instead, we're gonna focus on the aspects of these games rarely talked about, catering to the fan base. Now, think back. Surely, at some point, you've played at least one license-based game in your life. Now ask yourself, why? Why did you want to play that game? It's probably because you were already familiar with the characters, the concepts, the story. You're a fan. But what if you weren't? And here's our dilemma. Where do we draw the line when it comes to pre-existing knowledge? Should these games have a barrier of entry for non-fans? And should we hold that against them? On the flip side, should we reward games that don't have that barrier, and even more so if they help the franchise grow? Now, I know we all have our opinions on this, but let's dive a little deeper. But first, real quick, we're just gonna take sequels off the table. Obviously, if the game was a sequel to another game, even if it's based on something else, well, it's kind of expected that you played it prior, even if it wasn't always necessary. So, I'm gonna start off with an example that's just... it's gonna make everyone upset at me. Let's pick on the whipping boy of anime, shall we? Sword Art Online. Half the anime community loves it, and the other half hates it. It's just how it is. Of course, now fans are gonna hate this since I'm basically picking on it, but non-fans are gonna hate it too because I actually love SAO.
I am prepared, Internet. Levy your hatred upon me down in the comments below, for I love isekai. Be worst.
Boo! You stink!
But seriously, it makes the perfect example here. Sword Art Online Hollow Fragment is the first in a series of SAO games that, while brandishing the same characters and worlds, actually takes place in a completely alternate universe where there was a split in the timeline. And where does that split occur? Well, right at the start of the game, which is also the end of the first arc of the anime or the end of the light novel. Meaning that if you haven't experienced either of those, you're gonna be a little lost. And sure, the game does give a brief recap of prior events, but that could never really capture the same experience that seeing or playing the story could. And this extends into the gameplay as well. This is the first enemy of the game, one that you have to face with just one ally. Now, SAO fans will see this beast and immediately understand why this monster is a much bigger threat than he looks. And he looks pretty threatening already. But you non-fans, those of you who haven't experienced the source material, well, tough luck. Fight a monster, I guess. See the issue? But let me just cover my own ass here. I am not in the camp where everything needs to be for everyone. I don't think everything, whether it be games, movies, books, or whatever, needs to be all-inclusive or diverse. More often than not, the more any piece of media tries to appeal to everyone, the less likely it is to appeal to anyone. At least that's how I feel. I like what I like, and you like what you like, and that's fine. And whatever overlaps is what we have in common. It's what makes us unique. But when it comes to games, which is our focus here, how should I recommend this game to non-fans? Or should I at all? While this is going to spoil a bit of my up and coming review, the fact is that SAO Hollow Fragment is just pretty average. It's not bad, but it's not great either. Just a standard dungeon crawler with some neat MMO gimmicks thrown in. And normally, I could recommend it to dungeon crawler fans. Except again, there's that barrier of entry. And even ignoring this whole YouTuber reviewer shtick, what about recommending the game casually? SAO has an online-only multiplayer mode. How would I convince a friend to pick this up and play it with me? This is where I think a lot of licensed games in general tend to falter, because they are so preoccupied with making a quick buck off of fans that they completely forget that they could be using an awesome game to make new fans. And like I said before, SAO is pretty divisive among the anime community. I think as a fan, it would be way easier for me to get my friends into the series if I could lure them in with a great game. You know, get them hooked. And this applies to any franchise really, as long as the game is good enough. And trust me, it's been done before, with probably the most successful candidate being... That's right, GoldenEye for the N64 is probably the greatest, or at the very least, most influential license-based game ever made. I'd wager that it was plenty of kids' first time ever experiencing the most famous spy of them all. And it probably wasn't their last. And that's all thanks to the game. Though that doesn't really apply to me. As a kid, my friends just handed me a controller, didn't teach me how to play in a genre that I had never experienced before, and went on to use me as target practice. So my take on that won't go very far. However, there is another game. Another game
To rule them all.
Back in high school, the games you bought were often based on what everyone else was recommending. And in my group of friends, it was Soul Calibur 2 and Lord of the Rings: Return of the King. Now you have to understand that I was a terrible nerd back then and had never even heard of Lord of the Rings. Yeah, I know. But despite that, this game changed that, which is even more impressive seeing how it was the third game in the series. The combat was simple but really fun. There was multiplayer, but most of all, the game did an amazing job at telling its story. The way the levels followed the different paths the different characters took, levels felt unique, and the way the game's cutscenes melded with the movies, it was awesome. And it even made some of its own epic scenes just to further the experience. I was hooked. I had to see the movies. I had become a fan.
Must hold his gaze long enough for the unthinkable to become real. For hope to conquer all.
And this is why I think the focus on making license-based games great before just catering to the fans really does matter. But it's a fine line. Just as you don't want to alienate newcomers, you really don't want to alienate your loyal fans. Probably more so as they actually have more invested. There still needs to be those little references that only the fans will get, and those moments that can only truly be appreciated by those who really understand them. But again, it's a balancing act. One of my older videos, I mean older, watch at your own risk, is comparing the SNES and Sega Genesis Power Ranger movie games. The Genesis game follows the movie way better, but I think the SNES gameplay is more unique and a bit more fun. So a lot of it comes down to what's more important to you as a fan of both Power Rangers and games in general, which can be applied to any game really. But in terms of our dilemma, how do we go about rating this? How do we recommend this? Well, personally, I think that while on a broad spectrum, no game can be recommended to everyone, no matter how good, and nor should it be, which is why numbered scores can really only tell us so much. So I think factoring in how much a license-based game truly caters to its fanbase is fundamentally important. They are the target audience after all, and are most likely going to be the ones who are going to play the game. Because the truth is that as long as the game isn't legitimately bad, and sometimes even if it is, as long as the game is at least average, getting to experience a story you love or playing as characters you adore can really make it all worthwhile to the player, to the fan. And this goes beyond just licensed games too. Not to mention, like with the SAO example earlier, it opens up new experiences and new storylines that really do help to deepen that fandom, to expand the universe. Of course, I still think the absolute best way to proceed with any game, licensed or not, is to make the best game possible that is welcoming to any new player while introducing them to the franchise. And those are the games that truly need shoutouts to the masses. But if a game I'm reviewing is true to its fans, even if it's hard for non-fans to get into, then I will absolutely elevate my recommendations of it too. Just with the caveat of it being primarily for fans. It's not something a game should be penalized for as long as the gamer is aware of what they're getting into. And really, what fan doesn't like being catered to? Sometimes it's that niche that makes a game truly special. Hey everyone, it's Spammer D. And well, that's how I've chosen to solve this dilemma. Tell me, how would you go about it? I'd love to hear your opinions in the comments below. Also, are there any license-based games that turned you into a fan of a non-gaming franchise? Let's get a shout out for them as well. And remember to like and subscribe for even more reviews and the dilemmas we face. So until next